The Carb Addiction Doc, Dr. Rob Cywes says, gastrointestinal upset driven by grains, starchy vegetables, and fruits.
Those are the three sources of carbohydrates. So the stomach churns them up, gets them into the small intestine, and in the small intestine, that high concentration of sugar affects the lining cells of the small intestine. It affects the types of enzymes that break those sugars down, changing the pH of the intestine. The human body biologically has changed over time to no longer be a fermenter of food, but to use enzymes to break food down. So the more vegetables and fruits and other things that we're eating, the more fermentation is happening in the stomach, in the intestine. And the bacteria that are associated with that fermentation process damages the intestine, particularly the colon. So we get diverticulitis, we get colonic inflammation, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, and irritable bowel syndrome, gas bloat syndrome, and possibly even colon cancer. Not promoted by, red meat causes colon cancer. No, it's not. It's the vegetables you ate the red meat with. Blaming red meat for colon cancer is like blaming the match instead of the cigarette for your lung cancer. Because human beings have all the evolved enzymes to take care of meat. We're very good at breaking that down. We're very good at handling protein and fat. The enterohepatic circulation of bile handles fat. We've got a whole circulation system for that, called the lymphatic circulation system. We break down meat really, really well. Not able to break down cellulose. Not able to break down the majority of the sugar that occurs in vegetable material. Now, most vegetables, the leafy vegetables, not awful. But there is a subset of really, really, really toxic vegetable products, if you want to call them that. And those are the grains. Grain products are super toxic to the human body, either subclinically or clinically. If you have clinical experience with celiac disease, with gluten or gliadin allergies, with histamine reactions, that typically comes from your grain products. But the rices and the potatoes add to that as well. And they cause inflammation in the human intestine. And that ramped up inflammatory system damages the intestine. The same triggering can now spill over into the bloodstream, and those same immune system that is now ramped up against things like gluten and gliadin in the intestine because you've been eating a bunch of bread, that immune system, the cells and the antibodies are so similar to other parts of the human body, like insulin, like thyroid hormone, that you now get this cross reaction where the body is actually attacking itself, thinking it's a foreign body. And we call that autoimmune disease. And there are so many different areas where autoimmune disease attacks the human body. And that's because of that cross reaction to foreign antibodies, to foreign antigens that come into the human body primarily as part of our diet. Eating a high carbohydrate diet, including primarily the grains, the vegetables, and the fruits, very, very toxic to the entire intestine and affects the intestine in a multitude of different ways. So if you've got any of those GI upsets and slowly over the course of months convert yourself to being an enzyme nutritional producer rather than a fermentation nutrition producer, you'll find that a lot of those inflammatory conditions will subside.
The three main sources of carbohydrates, vegetables, including grains, fruit, and processed foods, make the stomach churn them up, gets them into the small intestine. The high sugar content affects the lining of the cells of the small intestine, types of enzymes that break those sugars down, and changes the intestine's pH. The human body biologically is no longer a fermenter of food, but uses enzymes to break food down. So the more vegetables and fruits that are eaten, the more fermentation is happening. Bacteria associated with this damage the intestine, particularly the colon. We get diverticulitis, colonic inflammation, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, bloat syndrome, and possibly colon cancer. As Dr. Cywes is quoting, it's not, oh no, red meat causes colon cancer. No, it is the vegetables you ate with the red meat. That is the cause of colon cancer. Blaming red meat for colon cancer is like blaming the match instead of the cigarette for lung cancer. Humans have all of the evolved enzymes to take care of meat, to break down the protein and fat. Our enterohepatic circulation of bile handles the fat. Our lymphatic circulation system breaks down meat very well, but it's not able to break down cellulose and the majority of the sugars in vegetables. Most leafy vegetables are not awful, but the really awful ones are the grains. They are super toxic to the human body. Grains can lead to celiac disease, gluten allergies, gliadin allergies, and histamine reaction. And rices and potatoes add to these also. Grains, rice, potatoes cause inflammation in the human intestine. Ramped up inflammatory system damages the intestine. That same triggering can spill over into the bloodstream. That same immune system that is now ramped up against gluten and gliadin, the cells and antibodies are so similar to other parts of the body, like insulin and thyroid hormone, you get a cross reaction. This cross reaction is the body attacks itself, thinking it is a foreign body. This is called autoimmune disease. These foreign antibodies and antigens come in through our diet. Eating a high carbohydrate diet, especially grains, vegetables, and fruits, are very toxic to the entire intestine. If you have any of these GI, gastrointestinal upsets, convert yourself to being an enzyme nutritional producer. A lot of these inflammatory conditions will subside. Annotated and summarized. Easy to share with loved ones. The description below the title for this video has these summary points.